Welcome to the Town of Bernardston Select Board meeting for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Just a reminder that this meeting is being broadcast live on BNC TV and live streamed on YouTube. To find BNC TV on YouTube, search for Bernardston-Northfield Community Television. This meeting will be available for later viewing by following the link at thetownofbernardston.org. And we'll start tonight with the warrants. We'll entertain a motion for the payroll warrant in the amount of $50,507.33.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion for the vendor warrant in the amount of $161,767.03.
So moved.
Second.
Just the largest amounts of that figure tonight is for the Franklin County Technical School with their second assessment of $81,468, and the payment to the FERCog for their quarterly assessment in the amount of $17,675. And we also received the annual landfill testing was completed by Mark Popham Engineering Firm for $7,370. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion for the regular meeting minutes of November 16th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion for the special meeting of December 6th, 2022.
So moved.
I'll second that one. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Stan was not at that one. That's why he didn't talk during that one. Calendar and announcements. Planning Board will be meeting Thursday, December 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Town Hall. The Finance Committee and Select Board will be having a joint meeting on Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 6:30 at the Town Hall. And just a reminder for everybody that the winter parking ban is still in effect. With a winter storm in the forecast for tomorrow night, please help our highway crew do their job by not parking on the streets. The highway superintendent has been given the authority by the Select Board to have any vehicles that impede plowing or sanding operations towed at the owner's expense. And just a reminder, the winter parking ban remains in effect until April 1st, 2023. And with that, we'll start with our appointments, and they are here. John Lepore and Bradley Bordewick are up first. This is for the forest management. Come on up, guys.
Thank you.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
As my dad used to say, 3 up and 4 down.
That's right. That's a good point. Okay, so this is for the forest management plan over at the Charity Farm Lot, right? An update on that?
That's what we're here for. We're going to review what we've been doing, and we the three of us took a walk with our professional forester to hear what was going on with the forest and get some ideas of what types of management strategies we could get out of the site. The big recurring theme is that back in the 70s, the site was high graded, which means that all of the good stuff was taken. So the trees that are existing now are not necessarily that healthy, and they're overgrown and they're too dense to be able to reestablish forest health. So to make a site that will eventually be ecologically as well as economically more viable, it needs to be managed soon. So Brad has kindly taken time. He's walked around and he's given us some specifics about that. One of the obstacles we're going to face when we move towards harvesting is of course public interest. It doesn't always see forest harvesting as being pretty. They always think it is being degrading. So we're going to suggest that we hold some public meetings, and we have a forester as well as we explain what it is we want to do and what the goals are of the site. And of course, the benefits of regrowth are going to be tremendous. And the big thing is that obviously one of the things that Brad will probably talk a lot more about is brush piles need to be left on the forest floor. So that, and this is something that I learned that I should have known, but I didn't, and he educated me. Leaving brush on the forest floor allows the next generation of trees to be able to grow up without being browsed by deer. which are obviously going to browse on saplings. So jump in anytime, either of you, whatever you need to say.
Doing great.
So far, so good.
Oh, okay, good. Wow. That's good. I mean, that's really, if you want specifics about the site, we can get into that, but this is basically just information, just so you know where we're headed. I would ask Brad to just talk about next steps that he's going to be doing, and then we're going to hopefully come back with a specific plan, and then schedule some public hearings so that people can understand what it is we're going to do.
Great.
My goal is to get some field work done up there. So I have to take test plots and take that data back to my office and put it into a plan.
Okay.
That's the short answer.
You hope to do some of that over the winter time, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a little bit more tree warden, like
Yep.
on the roads kind of work to do that I have to prioritize before I start this, but as soon as that happens, we'll get going.
Great. Sounds like it continues to move forward then.
Right. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. We did walk the trails, and he had a lot of great suggestions. You know, there's a lot of overgrowth is basically what it boils down to, which also makes it, you know, prone to forest fire if that happens. And there's a couple of large hemlock stands that, you know, they're really dense with no understory to them, and that also is not good because that's basically all same age stuff, forestry stuff. Anyways, you
It
have
was nice to see some people out there while we were walking. It was a fairly popular spot. There was guys taking pictures. Pretty neat.
I was going to ask you, how does it, with the kiosk you have up in the sign-in book, has that been getting filled in? People are using that?
We have a lot of use.
So good.
A lot of people,
Good.
a lot of regulars, and people just showing up and
Yep.
saying, "Hey, let's go." The parking lot, having that set, which you generously, you know, funded for the site, was huge.
Very,
Huge.
very nice improvement, and we thank you for
And
that.
some of the issues you had early on with some dumping and whatnot, that seems to have hopefully gone away.
Yeah, I think that's. I think
We
it's-
won't say it too loud.
Right.
but It seems to have come and gone.
Good.
There's been some signage. One of the other nice pluses we noticed too is one of the barometers of usage is how maps disappear.
Correct. Yeah.
And they are taken, which is good news to us. So we're presuming there are some new visitors as well who aren't quite as familiar. The feedback we keep getting, and again, we're trying to build awareness that we even exist.
Right.
Those who come seem to really like it.
Good.
The challenge is to invite more people in an effective way so they'll make use of the property and come to like it as much as we do.
Right.
We try to get up there every Friday, depending upon the weather, of course, and do some kind of management for a few hours. That's kind of our routine. So if you ever have a Friday morning, you want to
Yeah.
come and crank up a chainsaw or pull down some deadfalls, we can always use help.
Is there a timeline for this work? Some estimate of?
I'm going to defer to the.
Yeah, you can ask your son.
As soon as I can get out there and do the field work, we'll start going, and in coordination with that, we're also going to do these public meetings. We also talked about potentially doing some sort of an outdoor classroom, because John has ties to the school, and then the stuff we've done with the elementary school planting, we might be able to do something like that with the kids.
Yeah.
You know, part of the discussion that we had in the woods, we should mention this, is, you know, do we want to think about a harvest that would be used for educational purposes? Do we want to think about a harvest that would supply, you know, locally sourced lumber that could be used, for the town, for different town things, you know, for different building projects or whatever? These are things that we can talk further about down the road as we establish the actual goals. You know, our goals right now are really broad in general. First of all, understand what's there, what needs to be done, you know, at the bare minimum, and then what kind of a harvest we want, you know, in terms of, you know, what are we going to use it for, and how do we want to benefit, or do we want to, you know, all that is going to reflect on what it's going to cost, or what it's going to, I know you don't like that word.
You notice we're all twitching?
That's a four-letter word at this table. But, you know, what we could get for money out of it versus what we could get for benefits in terms of serving the town in broader ways, preparing the next generation in terms of understanding forests and how they need to be managed because of what has happened in the past. So,
Is there a sense of urgency about this project, or is it one that's going to be ongoing and have a life of its own?
Well, I don't know, as long as I think the two of us are still going at it, we'll be going, I imagine this is gonna take a while, you know.
Years.
Yeah, probably a couple of
To
years,
manage
yeah.
it properly,
Oh, yeah,
to
yeah.
bring it back to,
Right, well, once the harvesting is done, which is, you know, that timeline is, what do we wanna say, probably maybe 2 years?
It all depends on soil conditions. So
Right.
weather dependent, and it has to be just right for them to be working to keep the site nice.
okay,
If they're in there at the wrong time and make mud, or there's all sorts of bad things that could happen, so it's better to give them time.
Now,
If that makes
conversely,
sense.
conversely, one of the issues that was identified was the number of very tall trees in the parking lot area, which I think was one of the things that first got this discussion
Right.
going, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
Right.
And the sooner we get the plan in place, the sooner we can address that issue, and that's probably our most pressing concern right now. The other one is, we're happy to be out on the trails doing constant maintenance. However, it could be a little overwhelming, and we try to keep safety in mind as well. We'd rather not have trees come down to strike people at the wrong time. We spent several days and had quite the time. We had a large hemlock tree, which a great big chunk kind of came off and blocked the trail, with the butt end of it still up in the air about 30 feet. It took a little, we call it Italian ingenuity between the two of us and some pretty interesting gear. We did get it down so it's no longer a hazard. It's no longer taped off. But those are the things that we try to keep in mind, as well as safety for our visitors and guests.
It was a hickory. It was right on the boundary.
Hickory,
Yeah.
beg your pardon, not a
And
hemlock.
at the tree, at the trunk, the butt of the branch was this big around. So you can imagine the weight of that, and it was, the end of it was buried in the ground, so we didn't have that much mechanical advantage. It's quite a story. We ended up using a block and tackle, a come-along,
Cables.
and a number of cables.
Pulleys.
And I think we had a total of, if you look at
ATV.
ATV, we ended up having probably about somewhere between 8 and 10, you know, points of advantage with leverage. We didn't have a tractor to just say, hey, come on, let's get this thing down. It was quite an undertaking. It was fun, but
Made quite a thump when it landed.
yeah.
I can tell you that.
So we'll be back, you know, sometime probably in the spring to, you know, present some ideas and lay out a plan in more detail in terms of what we think, and then look for your feedback.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate the work.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
John, I think you're up again, right?
I don't know, I think we are.
Planning Board, Emergency Management, MVP grant,
Yeah, right. I'm gonna-
joined by Dave Pomerantz.
Yeah, all right.
Those trees that we did with the tree hearing are all done now,
Okay, perfect, thank you.
including the ones at the Vets Memorial.
He's taking them all down.
All those trees on Merrifield and the Vets Memorial are done.
It's done?
Done.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have coming up here, Chris Wisp from the Planning Board, Emergency Management, MVP grant, with John Lepore and Dave Pomerantz, who's a Leiden resident.
Yes.
He's Emergency Management Co-Chair up in Leiden.
Yes.
And John and Dave, I was gonna say John and John. John and Dave have been working together along with the Planning Board in Bernardston on talking about some MVP grant possibilities.
Right. Maybe just a little backstory here as well. Dave and I met at a MEMA workshop and decided that he could put up with my coffee at my house, so we started getting together and meeting regularly. I almost killed him the other day with my coffee, but that's beside the point.
He's still here.
He kind of danced out of the room, but we went through and we reviewed the September plan that we approved. I think it was September 24th or 29th of 2021 when we had the ComCon. We did the Skype. We had a lot of people here from different committees, commissions. We had, you know, the fire chief, emergency management. All of that came forward, and then we decided that the two areas, you know, that we wanted to focus in on were, you know, flooding and forest fires. I don't know if you remember that meeting. We also went over and talked a little bit about the criteria that, I thought I brought it with me. No, it's in here. The criteria, I know I was looking for something. The criteria that MVP looks for, I think the one I gave you initially was blue, and kind of the nature-based solutions, the stakeholder process, the ongoing monitoring. all of those criteria are things that are critical towards getting a substantial grant for doing the kinds of things we want to do. So, Dave, jump in anytime, or did you want to add some other pieces?
No, I'll just let the board know, I know Ken, we go back a long time to Kiwanis days, but I lived in Leiden for about 17 years and I retired in March from the city of Northampton as their Director of Facilities Management. And part of my work involved emergency management and climate adaptation work. So I moved from retirement to taking on the co-EMD's job in Leiden, as well as the Building Needs Committee. So it's, giving back, that's fine. But as a result, we're going to this two-town tabletop exercise that John talked about last month, which was a great exercise for both towns to participate in, and we're going to do more of it. John and I started talking about the next grant phase, which is the action plan, which builds on the first grant that we got in both towns. Right now, our draft plan, emergency management plan, is at MEMA being reviewed. So we've had a committee up and running, and just like Bernardston, flooding and wildfires. I mean, those are our two main concerns. And from my work in the climate adaptation field, we all understand that climate change doesn't stop at this town's borders and then we escape it up in Leiden or vice versa. So collaboration on projects that can really take us the next step in identifying issues and working towards mitigation, which is what this proposal is where John and I are going to try to go with this project. So yeah, if you want to talk about the project, and then the only other thing I'll say is that John and I are doing the same political show in Leiden next Monday for the select board, climbing the mountain and doing a run through on the project. So this is a dress rehearsal.
Great.
So,
We did get it. Everybody got that ahead of time.
Okay, so you've had a chance to review that. Okay, so one of the things that I felt that was really important, we felt was really important, and it's kind of interesting how this evolved. I wrote this, and then I sent it to David and said, what do you think? And then that night, David wrote this part, basically the first 2 pages, and then we began hammering it out and working with it over my killer coffee. And we had a great time doing it. And I think the bottom line is that it's really clear what we can do, what we can accomplish. The MVP program looks very favorably on regional kinds of grants in terms of funding them and supporting them because it's watershed based. It's like, okay, you guys are in the same area, your neighbors, it makes sense. And, so the favorability for funding is much higher going this route as opposed to each of us doing our own thing. Plus, there's no need for redundancy. So anyways, we began, I'm very focused on, okay, what are the actual steps you need to do in order to get that done? So I was, focusing on the specific things that we need to do and came up with basically a 2-year funding process. The first year essentially is gathering all of the information that we need about, really assessing the specifics of our forests and of our waterways, which we're doing in Bernardston already with the river corridor mapping needs to be done in Leiden as well. And then the second year, and then making recommendations from it in the second year, getting the funding to actually mitigate those particular things in reasonable ways. So.
Is there a sense of the ask, how much of a grant you're going to apply for?
It's really hard to say because I keep asking myself that question over and over again, in my head. And I actually was looking at some of the other grants that have gone across the state. I didn't bring it with me, but some of them are obviously rather huge. 2 towns, it could be, some of them are just enormous, like, $250,000 or $500,000. So I'm not saying that we would apply for that amount or we would be able to manage that. I think part of it goes back to like, well, what's a reasonable amount to manage and get accomplished within that time frame, et cetera. And that's going to take some serious thinking. The first step that we need to do is to get our paperwork in before the 20th to get our intentions for application.
That's 20th January.
Yeah, January 20th. So that's coming up.
Right.
And we wanted to get the support of the select board to be able to move forward with submitting something, they would give us written feedback in terms of our interest with this process, this grant proposal. And then we'd have to really begin to sift out kind of like, what are we asking for and what is this gonna take to make this happen? So it's kind of hard to answer that
Okay.
yet.
Right.
I'm just trying to get to the flip side of what is it that the town is going to have to
So
invest in order to get the...
Well, that we don't know yet. And
Okay.
I think working with capital asset is where we're gonna need to go
Right.
next, because they would need to pull together the paperwork, if that's what we're gonna do. If we're gonna collaborate with them and have them write the grant, then they would need the information. They would have to do an RFP, a
Mhm.
request for proposal.
Yeah.
Now, whether they would write up the initial letter of interest of what the project's gonna be, I don't know. I guess we need to talk with them about that too.
I know part of that, well, just to back up a little bit, I think it's a great idea to join with the two towns. I think that's a home run, based on everything we all see. You and I were at a meeting yesterday, and we kept hearing the same thing with the USDA.
with USDA.
We have reached out, I think Stan, you were on a call with Lou, talking to Capital Strategic, our grant writing company we work with, broaching this subject several weeks back, before we knew this was even in the works. So it is on their radar for this town to work with us on this particular grant. I think this is new and more improved information than we had when we originally talked to them. Is that true? I think it would be good.
Yeah, and I've spoken with Chris separately about
Yep.
this, and she proposed a Zoom meeting with Capital so that, whether the select board participates or not, certainly the planning board and John and Dave, you would be critical for a call like that, because you fellas know the lay of the land. You know the specifics of really what the MVP can help both our towns out with. So I think we're going to get the ball rolling on that. As it is, I've got to talk to Blythe tomorrow on a separate matter. So with the select board's blessing, I'll certainly bring this up to her and see what her schedule is as far as putting this call together.
I'm good with that. Can you?
Yeah.
Stan? I mean, I think it's a great, so we have this company on board with us that has the background of the community here. We'd have to tie them into the Leiden piece so they understood Leiden a little better to help them write documents like this. They're obviously going to need input from you folks as well to help them get that letter out if they're willing to do that, which I'm sure they will be.
Right.
And to help us follow along with the grant, take some of the pressure off of you guys from having to write it and manage it and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah, the expression of interest, which is
the
due
big
by
piece.
the 20th.
Yeah.
It's really a form. They just
Okay.
want a sort of a tickle of an idea.
Okay.
What is being proposed here? They'll provide feedback, MVP will provide feedback, and then I forget what the actual grant submittal timeframe it looks like. But it's not too far out, but it's not, the next week you have to get a full grant application submitted. Ken, I thought you were going to start asking about what the town is going to commit.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
So there was a lot of these MVP programs, in-kind contributions by staff,
volunteer hours,
by citizens, goes toward whatever the in-kind contribution would be. And there's a strong piece that John and I have put into this grant, where we're going to be thinking about establishing citizen scientists. So on top of the technical experts who are going to be looking at, river erosion or soil and forest conditions, we want to talk about or think about establishing citizen scientists. They're used a lot on the coastal areas right now for looking at beach erosion and monitoring wetlands. There's no reason why we can't think about doing that here, because this is a multi-year project. And then the other thing I'll just end with is, this is right on the mark as far as helping both Leiden and Bernardston improve their emergency management responsibilities and response. This will lead to mitigation to hopefully reduce emergency response costs and rebuilding costs for the towns. So
The source of MVP funds, is it federal or state?
it's
Both.
It's both.
It's both. It comes from both sides, yes.
Okay. And they have different criteria, or is it,
Well,
when you get a
it's-
grant,
It's through them, Ken. And this is basically their principles. I forget you weren't.
Did we get this?
We did a while, a long time ago, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I do have that.
Yeah, and that was part of the discussion in the September 24th, 21 meeting, where we talked about, we want to make sure that whatever we decide and whatever we prioritize can hit as many of these criteria as possible and, it's feasible. But yeah.
Well, I would say, yeah, Lou's gonna reach out to them tomorrow anyway. I would set up a time with these folks that's amenable to them, and if one of us can be there, all of us, we definitely would be there.
Sounds good.
Their schedules are probably gonna be easier
Sure.
to meet than some of ours,
Right.
so we can keep the process moving. If that's
Right.
fair to you guys, at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
to start with, talking
Yeah,
to them.
that makes sense.
Yeah, John and I we're not looking for a motion to,
Yep. No, I
formal
think it's great.
support, I think, but a nod.
Yeah.
And like I said, John and I are gonna be up in Leiden on Monday, having the same conversation with a different board, so.
So you're already keeping track of the man hours that you're investing into this for the in-kind back?
I think it's when the clock ticks when the project starts.
All right,
Yeah,
darn, you don't get to-
After the contract is
Yeah.
signed and
Okay.
certified by the state.
Just to give you some sense of it, though, when we did the planning grant, which Chris and I were chair of for the MVP, we had no trouble meeting the match of,
Yeah,
I forget
yeah,
what it was, but it was,
You had a lot of help, yeah.
we had a
That's
lot
good.
of help. Anytime you meet,
It counts, right?
It counts.
Yeah.
I mean, every minute counts. So we just, it's record keeping that's the kind of the key.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, yeah, it's record keeping, and that's all part of it.
And the citizen scientist piece of it could get a huge number of hours in, as
Right.
people's
Yes.
interest.
Yeah,
Right, and then you also got like, the highway crew, any work that they do, anything that's done with emergency management.
Already, right, yeah.
Just anything to the fire department, whatever, we end up with hours accumulating. So in terms of money that's gonna come out of the pockets of and again, that four-letter word of cost, it's probably gonna be negligible.
and obviously there's a new administration that's
Right.
coming into the State House in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so the Baker administration obviously strongly supported the MVP program. I don't think it's gonna be a sharp turn to the right and discontinued. But for now, we're assuming that it'll be as robust a program and looking for interesting projects. And, Western Mass should be at the table too.
Right. I appreciate all the hard work you guys have done so far on it, really. Peter, you have a question?
I think I already know the answer, but would this program help along with the bridge and culvert replacements
Yes.
that we're looking, we know get very costly? I think this would help recognize the state that we're trying to be proactive and progressive and trying to address these problems, and we're not constantly replacing the same bridges, culverts.
That's the intent.
Spot on, yeah.
And then the other piece that we don't want to talk about yet, but is the possibility of tying some other agencies involved in it. You mentioned the Connecticut River Water, you mentioned another group, the Conservation District.
Oh, I sit on the Franklin Conservation District Board, so their whole focus is soils and agriculture. And we could certainly get them involved as well, either as project sponsors or participating, which could also help us with additional grant activity too.
That'd be great.
The thing I think that we're both real excited about is this is a really innovative approach. I don't know if you remember when we met with Andrew Smith, and I started talking about the forest fires and the recognition and the kinds of things that need to be done around that with locating, sources of water and access and all those pieces. He said, I've never heard anyone even talking about that. That's so interesting. That's spot on. And then the river corridor mapping is way out in front of anything that you're going to see come out of FEMA, because that's not their focus. But with the hillsides that we have and the outwash that we get, it's a critical piece. So,
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate it.
so this could turn into a statewide model that would be mimicked by other communities, and that's real interesting to me.
After they give us the money.
After they get some money. Right. Then we get the royalties.
Get your priorities. Ongoing.
You'll be making money on this.
If we can do anything else, let us know. I mean, we'll get the contact made with you
Great.
guys, and if
That'd
we
be
can be
great.
there, we'll be there for sure. And
Yeah.
But if you need something else, let us know.
Yeah. I think we're going to wait so where we're leaving right now is we're going to wait to hear from Lou about a time that we can.
Yeah, and Chris will be in the morning, so we'll
Yep.
get together right away and figure
Okay.
this out.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you
And
for
if
your
one of us
support.
can't be there, don't wait to have it, just
Right,
to
right.
Right.
keep
Okay.
it moving.
Sounds good.
Good.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Chris, do you have anything else while you're up here?
I guess it depends on if you want to jump to
I am gonna jump to the new business.
resignations and
Yep.
appointments.
Just so everybody knows out there in TV land, we do have another appointment coming in a little bit later, closer to 7:30, so we're gonna stop with our appointments at this point, but we will pick them back up a little bit later in the meeting. So we'll move on to new business, planning board resignations and appointments. So we've had a letter of resignation from Charles Milkey to resign from the planning board effective December 16th, 2022. He has written a very nice letter to the town offering his resignation and offering his support of help during the transition time. So I guess to start with, would need a motion to accept the resignation from the planning board.
So move.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lou, if we could write Chuck a letter that this board could sign.
Yep, thank
He's
you.
been on it for quite a number of years now.
Yeah.
In varying capacities.
Yeah.
And that is a truly volunteer board.
And he's been great to work with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great guy. So in Chuck's place, Shannon Wisman has approached conversations with Chris. She'd like to be appointed as a full member to the planning board. And along with that, John Lepore has agreed to come back on as an alternate, effective December 16th for both of those appointments as well, pending the board's approval. So I'm looking for a motion to appoint Sharon Wisman to the planning board effective December 16th, and to appoint John Lepore effective December 16th as the alternate to the planning board.
So moved.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anything else in regards to the planning board and/or town clerk you'd wanna?
Yeah,
Yep, the next one up is you as well,
Town hall drop box.
as I turn the page. So we're gonna have a little discussion about a town hall drop box, which Chris has brought to this board in the past to broach the subject. She has done more research and talked formally to all the players within the town hall. Thank you. To gather some information as to people's feelings on a drop box, if they felt it would be used, not used, types of a box it should be. So Chris, what do you got for us in regards to a drop box?
Well, I have talked with Mona Minor, the tax collector, and the rec commission, and both of them are very supportive of getting a drop box, because it would be convenient for town residents to have a place to be able to drop their payments off when the town hall is closed, since we're have limited hours really. So it would be available to them out front. These two that I have here were actually suggested. I actually had picked out one that was like around $500, and the vendor said it really is very cheap. The metal is so thin, it just probably wouldn't last very long.
Okay.
So he sent these two and suggested, and honestly, I'm good with doing the one for $1,500 or $1499.99. It meets our needs. And that's actually, that's cheap compared to, you can see there's another one on here that I gave you too, and they go up. They go up from $1,500 and more if you want a good quality one that's gonna last.
So this would get secured outside the building.
Yes, Lou and I talked about putting it next to the sidewalk. We have to actually cut out of the grass and pour a cement pad, and then obviously bolt it down to that cement pad. So that way people who are handicapped, they don't have to walk all the way up the ramp, or they can't, obviously, we can't put it on the stairs or on the front porch because it's not ADA compliant. So we thought right there by the sidewalk would be a good place for it.
Thoughts
Can
or
we
feelings?
back up?
from everybody? Go ahead.
What's that?
Can we back up and explain to me why we need one when the U.S. Postal Service delivers mail?
Because people walk in here all the time, and me sitting at that front desk, sometimes I'm taking tax payments. because people come in when the tax collector isn't here.
No, I can't accept tax payments. That's not my role as clerk of the
But I'm
town.
just saying, it would be easier, there's people who, you know, they're here mostly on the weekends, they work during the week, they don't mail in, they don't wanna mail in their stuff.
Why?
I don't know, we're just trying to make it easier for everyone. There's all those,
$1,500 of precious money when I can stick it in the mail for 47 cents or 57 cents or whatever it
well, when it
costs.
comes to the
60
to the
60 cents.
ballots, for
Yeah, 60 cents.
dropping off ballots, they have a time frame, and so it's an election day. I have to go out there, I would have to go out at 8 o'clock and unlock the door, but at least if somebody wanted to come and drop off their ballot, they could. Or they could drop it off at any time, early that morning if they're, because it's not gonna get through the mail on time.
I'm gonna sound silly here, but I think in the mailing that you sent to us about ballots, there is a provision to mail in your ballot.
Yeah,
For that
That's
same 60 cents, I can stick my ballot in the mail.
84 cents.
84 cents, okay. As opposed to $1,499.99. Tell me why I need to offer that service.
First of all,
Well,
rec commission.
and I could interject here because I've been part of these conversations for several weeks now. This is another thing that has really come to light for a lot of municipalities with the advent of the pandemic. That it's a convenience for the residents, and
So
you know,
they don't
Chris
have to come in.
Chris owns in on tax payments, but really any of the offices in here, tax payments obviously are a big one. As the rec commission has signups, if Chris
I
isn't
get
here,
interrupted with
I get
those.
people back here looking to sign up for, kids sign up for basketball or soccer or whatever. And I think the word is convenience. You know, it's really for the residents, not because anybody in this town hall doesn't want to interact with the public, but to Chris's point, we are open limited hours. And if somebody's got a full-time Monday through Friday gig, how are they going to get here? You know, you've got your Wednesday at 5 to 6 p.m. And other than that, it's pretty tough to get here. I understand what you're saying about
You're
the...
catching me on a bad day, but that blue box right in front of the post office is there 7 by 24
But
by
that
360.
blue
No,
box,
and-
the blue box in front of the post office gets emptied at 3:45 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it gets bundled up and sent to Boston, and then it goes,
Actually goes to
To
Springfield,
Hartford.
but that's okay.
it doesn't go to Springfield, it goes to Boston.
That goes to Boston now.
And then it comes back here 2 days later. So if somebody has a tax payment and they're like, oh my God, my tax payment's gonna be late, the tax collector's office is closed, what do I do? Goes in the drop box. It just it's a convenience for the residents, it really
It has to
isn't.
be postmarked. So if their letter gets postmarked, then they're all set. Doesn't
Yep.
matter if it gets here
I
three.
don't
doesn't-
think that's true with the tax
As long as
collector
it's
either.
postmarked before the deadline.
Not for ballots. Well,
Well, for taxes. As long as it's
I don't know, I
postmarked.
think she has to receive it
No,
in
it's supposed to be
hand.
postmarked because you can't have, you don't have any control over when somebody puts something in the mail, they're getting delayed somewhere else. So as long as you've got it post, just like your IRS payments, as long as it's postmarked by that deadline, you're all set.
Well,
That's the way it is.
well, again, it's.
I would
it's
rather
really
see, I'd rather see
convenient.
a pole putting a door out here and have it dropped inside the
You
building.
can't do
and-
it, because it's 88, it's not ADA compliant. How is a hand?
How do
handicap
people get in
person-
here now? Put one here and put one over there. It's ADA
Nobody will
compliant.
use it if it's over here, because it's not inside.
It's there.
Well, whatever. I just, I'm trying to do something good for the residents, because we've been asked, how come we don't have a drop box? And I would say probably 90% or 95% of the municipalities around here have drop boxes now. Even the Fire and Water District put one out in front of their building now.
Anybody have anything else?
Huh?
So we're good with that for now?
I would want to know a few things. I'd want to know is how secure these are. if you're talking about putting,
It'd be bolted to a cement pad.
yeah, but I mean, you said there's a difference in thickness in the metal, how easy are these things to break into? Do we have any literature on what these things are like, Chris? I mean,
I have more information I can give you, yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, to say that, I'm just saying that, let's keep our arguments in the right text. I mean, as far as things being late in the mail, that's the mail's problem, not our problem.
And I'm just going by the amount of feedback I got from residents. They're asking, how come we don't have a drop box? And that's the feedback I'm getting from residents.
I don't know, I never heard anything about it, but.
Well, and if I could add one other thing, and I'm not looking to sell this or not sell this, this is strictly your decision. But
Right.
whether you chose to do it or not, we wouldn't do it until the spring anyway, because, with the ground freezing, everything else, it's just not going to happen overnight.
Right.
So if this is better off considered as an FYI, just some information for you to process and contemplate, we can revisit it in the future sometime.
Well, I think it's something that we need to have in our hands when we go to that meeting with the finance committee in talking about ARPA money. Because, this could be part of that as well.
Right. For
Yeah,
next
and-
Monday night.
It's a one-time, well,
Right.
it's really not a one-time, because somewhere down the road it would have to be replaced, but it's basically a one-time expense.
Yeah, it should last us for quite a few years, I would hope.
Yeah, I would too. That's what I say. I would want to make sure that whatever we get is, if we do it, is really rugged and, not bottom of the line, but.
Right. Well, this is probably a middle of the line, the $1,500 one.
I probably wouldn't go there. I'd probably go with it myself. I'd probably go with the $21.99.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, if we're going to do it, you want to make sure that you're doing it and you're doing it right. No, I'm not saying we're going to do it or not, because we've got to talk. The finance committee, we've got to talk. It's a good idea.
Right.
I think we need the location is going to be critical of where we're going to put it, because we don't want it someplace really close to the sidewalk, where somebody just can come along with a baseball bat and start beating on it.
Yeah, we live in such a rough
Well,
town.
we have damage around here. We have signs that
I
get stolen.
know,
We
I
get
know.
everything. And you're living right down the street from one of the biggest crime areas in the state of Vermont, which is Brattleboro. So.
Okay, so we'll bring this up Monday night to the finance committee
Okay.
about ARPA funding. Because personally, I can go either way. I mean, if people are
Yeah.
asking for it in the
Yeah,
community.
and like I said, I'm just doing it because
Yep.
I've heard so much from the tax collector.
Yep.
The rec commission is in big support of it because people walk in here all the time trying to drop off their payments, and if it was just outside, they would drop it off in there.
I'm gonna ask a crazy question
And then-
here. Would the insurance company have any way in if people are putting tax money in here and if somebody steals the box?
I would have to check on that, sir.
Because there are some people that do
Right.
pay in cash, and I'm not saying it would be such a smart idea to put cash in here, but it
That's true.
very much could happen. And then it turns into a
Well,
he said, she said.
and this is a good point, because I really think that we need to consider what could be placed in a box like that. It's easy for us to think of, okay, well, I got a tax payment, I'm going to write a check, and it might be the way that we do business, or if I'm signing up somebody for soccer, I'm going to fill out the form, I'm going to write a check, but not everybody's wired the same. So I know for sure that Mona has accepted cash payments, so it's definitely a good thing to give some consideration to, because it's going to be something that payments are contained in. But also the other thing, and you haven't mentioned this, is if we get a FedEx delivery, because Mona gets a lot of FedEx envelopes
Hours, yeah.
that come in off hours. This could be the repository where those things are dropped.
Yeah, it's big
Right.
enough for a large enough package. I actually talked to the FedEx driver when he came in, And I said, if somebody needed to sign for it though, what do you do? And he said what he does is he'll take a picture of the package next to the drop box, so he's got proof that he dropped it in the drop box. And we would have Bernardston drop box, and we could also put on it no cash.
Yeah.
So people know, and they're taking a chance if they put cash in there. They shouldn't.
Yeah, I think there's some things we'd
So there's
have
things we can do.
we'd have to work out, but I think it's the first thing is to put it on the list and go through the,
The ARPA.
And in some of your
Find out what you want to fund it with.
email chain you have with other small town
Not that much money.
administrators, just see if anybody's had any issues with them that, or a learning curve they had with it.
Oh, that's good. I'll
say.
put that out there too.
That'd be great.
And, you know, when you mention the blue box over on Center Street, you know, federal crime to mess with the US mailbox, I would imagine that there's some heavy penalty to get involved with any shenanigans with a municipally owned collection box.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, whether state law backs us up or whatever. Maybe we draft a, you know, if we do get a box, maybe we then put forth a bylaw with some really severe punishment for.
why don't you just send a memo out to the other administrators in the area and see if they can give us any feedback if they have drop boxes of what they've had for issues.
Yeah, and that'll be the stepping on point, Stan. That'll be
That
tomorrow.
we could look at those issues and try to work around them, so
And
we
if
know.
they've bought them just since the pandemic, maybe they can suggest what
I
one
know
they
Turner's
like
has a
too.
beautiful one outside their town hall over there. You can
Who
see it.
does?
Turner's Falls, as you
Yeah.
drive down the avenue, you can see it.
Yeah,
I don't know what they allow in it, but
yeah, I
never walked up to it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Anything else from the town clerk or planning board
I don't
that
think
wasn't
so.
already on the agenda?
No, just one thing, if you see some work going on over by Pringle Farm, Pacifico they've resubmitted modification for their solar plan over there, which the planning board will be holding a public hearing January 19th. But we've also told them that they can go ahead and they can start doing cutting over there because we issued them a permit back in 2019. And we said, you can start cutting in that portion of the property that you already have a permit for. But they aren't doing anything in Greenfield now. It's gonna all be in Bernardston instead, so they're doing another area north of what they originally had permit for.
So
So they're,
is that another place that's gonna come in to wanna negotiate a pilot agreement?
You just read my mind.
yes.
You might wanna get any contact info you have to Lou, just so he has it too.
Okay, but I just wanted to make you
Yeah.
aware, if you
If we
see
see it,
any cutting
people
or
ask.
anything going over there, they were told they could go ahead. They've already met with the Conservation Commission, and they've got their, order of conditions.
Conditions.
So where will they enter? Did they move their
They're still
access
gonna-
road?
No, they're still gonna enter where they were.
Right, kind of
And they're
across
still
from the
gonna
steel
tie
shed?
into the pole there in Greenfield, I guess. I haven't looked at their new plan at all, it just came in yesterday, but they did ask, Chris Pitney from Pacifico called me yesterday and asked, because of course, they wanna get the cutting done in the wintertime, really. It's the
Who
best
put
time
the
to do
one,
it.
who put the one in Greenfield down past the police station on the left-hand side as you go down?
Police station.
Yeah.
Oh, our police station? That's
Oh.
the Greenfield Water
That's the
Department.
water department.
No, it's
On the
down,
left.
it goes going all the way down, you come to the farm and, or cross the road.
Yeah, that's the Greenfield Water
Yeah.
Department. They have wells out
They have
there.
a well out there. That's
Town of
been there
Greenfield, city
for
of
a while
Greenfield.
now.
Our water, oh, their water.
Their wa-
department.
yeah,
Their
Greenfield's-
water department.
Greenfield's
Their
water.
water department.
Yeah. That's a pretty good sized field out there
Yeah,
too.
let's notice it.
This time of year, it really jumps out at you.
Yeah, but it's been there for 2-3 years,
Oh,
I
wow,
think.
guess I've been
At least.
sleeping.
Guess so.
Well, that's good. They're gonna continue with that project though, for us.
Yeah, what they've been
Tax dollars.
doing is just getting through all the permitting, like for their interconnection and doing all that paperwork and getting those permits.
No word on ours.
You haven't heard anything from Amoresco, have you, Lou?
I've heard nothing from them. Last I knew, they were still waiting for Eversource to give them the,
Finish their study.
yeah.
That was the
Which
last
I don't
heard.
understand that, because we had Dan Ingold apply for the interconnection.
Yeah, but then
Is
they
there
wanted,
something
then they
more
had to
there?
do their study to see, because Amoresco wanted to put out more than the 1 megawatt.
Okay. So they were gonna do battery storage.
But they were hoping, they were shooting for the moon to see if they could get away without putting more millions into the infrastructure
Yeah,
without having to do that.
right.
And then they would back off from there,
Yep.
I think is what they're shooting for. Okay, thank you.
Can't think of anything else right now.
We'll be here for a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we have an appointment to the Recreation Commission. We do have openings on our
Thanks, Chris.
Recreation Commission.
Thank you.
And the Pioneer Athletic Director, Carrie Baird, has expressed interest in the vacancy on the Rec Commission. Carrie stated that Rec Department athletics serve as a foundation for high school sports, and she would like the opportunity to help develop Bernardston's athletes of the future. She has spoke to Lou at least once, if not twice.
Yes, she came in the office and I guess she attended the last rec commission meeting.
Correct.
She came into the office to follow up on and ask some questions about the way things are done around here, and her stepping on point was being able to see Bernardston students become student athletes over at Pioneer. And she made a very good point, because obviously I'm involved with high school athletics, and I don't want to say you get desensitized to the process, but if all of a sudden any of the town programs just dried up and they didn't have any activity, well, suddenly a couple of years down the road, high school athletics are going to suffer that. I know Turner's Falls for years has had a hard time with a lot of their extracurricular activities. So Carrie made some really good points.
She lives in town?
Yes.
She does. She lives up on Eden
What
Trail.
What did Jen say?
Jen sent me a text. She asked if she had already been appointed, and to my knowledge, Carrie worked on the craft fair with her on Saturday, so there's been no opposition to my knowledge.
I'd like to know if Jen's for it. I guess Jen's the one that's running the rec.
Yeah, Jen's the chair. Yeah, and these are elected positions, so if the board chooses to appoint Carrie, it would only be until the next town election, and Carrie's aware of that.
Okay.
I think it's great. We have a volunteer wanting to get on the rec committee.
Volunteers are always a good thing around
Yes.
It
here.
is.
Does somebody want to make a motion to appoint Carrie Baird to the rec committee?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have a bunch of licenses tonight to run through. So I'll read through them, and I think historically we've approved them as a group.
Correct.
Okay, so we have, these are all for the fiscal year, or not fiscal year, for the year 2023. The first one is used car dealer dismantler license class 3 for Bernardston Auto Wrecking. Used car dealer's license class 2 for Bernardston Auto Wrecking. Used car dealer license class 2 for Beckwith's. Used car dealer's license class 2 for Danault Auto Sales. This one is for an entertainment license for Crump and Fox Club Inc., doing business as Zeke's Smokehouse Grill. Next one up for entertainment license is Hitchcock Brewing Company. Another entertainment license for Kringle Candle, 220 South Street. Next one up is a common victualler license for the Farm Table LLC. The next one is the Farm Table for an entertainment license at 219 South Street. Next one is a retail package goods store license for Kringle Candle.
Now, these are just ones that you just wrote up. It's not ones that people have applied for?
The auto licenses are essentially automatic renewals. They carry a $30 license fee. The entertainment licenses are for any group that has regular activities of over 100 people at them. There's no charge for the entertainment license, so that's really an automatic. And Mark, drawing a blank on his last name, Mark LaPierre from Kringle stopped in today, and he had their renewal applications for the liquor license all signed off and everything, and he was simply waiting for checks to be cut. So he brought that in, and I said, well, okay.
Okay. I make a motion to approve all of the licenses as so read by our chairman, Brian Keir.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Just informationally, is there a limit as to how many of those we can have in the town?
I don't know the number of liquor licenses. I know we're way under what we can get.
There is a limit on the number of liquor licenses, and generally speaking, we're less than 40% capacity.
Yes. Okay.
I'll steal those from you. I feel like you're buying a house, right?
Yeah.
If you want that moving on.
Thank you. And keep everything in order.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
That's that. Next up, we have a couple of time off requests.
Yep.
I think you looked at those already, right?
I did, yes.
Somebody would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the 2 submitted time off requests.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're gonna move on to old business. Folks that have been watching us for a few weeks have heard us talking about a land donation to the town. Previously, a landowner in town offered to donate a portion of the property to the town. Town council had weighed in and reminded us that the acceptance of the donation required town meeting approval. After further discussions with the landowner has decided to withdraw that offer of donating the land to the town. So if folks heard us talking about it and we don't seem to bring it up again, that is why. Next up, under old business, we have an older BES use request, one that we received back in October for Pioneer Youth Basketball Association. When we rejected it back then, as the principal had not signed it, and it conflicted with Bernardston Rec Department's youth basketball programs. They have worked out some times with the school and the rec department, and I'll just read you what the school has responded. You'll have a packet of applications for the use of the elementary school. Due to scheduling conflicts, the Pioneer Suburban Basketball Group has changed their time request to Monday and Wednesday from 7 to 8:30 and Fridays from 5 to 7. I have I gave the green light to go ahead with these times contingent upon approval from the Board of Selectmen. These times do not conflict with any other requested times currently in front of the school. This was signed by the school secretary, that letter, and in turn, the document for the usage was signed by the principal. So it's everybody's pleasure to want to approve
So moved.
Pioneer Youth Basketball Association. Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we're still waiting on one appointment to come here in the next 25 minutes or so. So we'll move on to other business for now. I do have one thing I'd like to bring up under other business. I had some conversations with Brian Miner, the highway superintendent, and he was asking us to consider the sidewalk that runs through Cushman Park to have it be not plowed in the winter. That sidewalk is starting to break up, and the freeze thaw from plowing it, he feels, is going to contribute to it breaking up quicker. If they continue it up South Street in front of Antonio's, there is a state highway sidewalk marked in Route 5 in that location, which then continues them onto the same sidewalk. You just wouldn't be able to cut through the park for the winter months, the plow season. They'd still have access to the downtown area. You just have to go a little farther north or a little farther west, depending on which way you're traveling. They get to the state marked crosswalk. So he asked us to consider that. I felt it was pretty sound what he was suggesting to try to add to the life of that sidewalk. I don't know what anybody's feelings are on that. Can anybody see any downfall to not plowing that for the short period?
I don't know how many people use it. I'm sure it's a shortcut. If you plow it and it gets icy, who sands it? All that good stuff.
I think currently we don't sand it to my knowledge.
No.
I mean, Brian would have to weigh in on that, but I mean, I would support him not.
Yeah,
I would
think-
I would go along with his recommendation.
Ken, you have any?
I'm a user of that, and
Okay.
I have no problem at all with it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, to preserve the life of that sidewalk, if it's starting to show signs of wear and tear, that this is really a sensible alternative to it. And, in the winter, you get a few more steps in.
Right.
doesn't hurt.
And where people currently cross Route 5 now and or Church Street,
Right.
there is no marked. Is there one on Church Street?
Yes, there is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I take that back. Over on,
Yep.
in front of the old four-leaf Bernardston Grill, there was not
Correct.
a painted sidewalk in the state road.
Correct.
If we get a lot of pushback, we can always revisit it.
Sure.
So I'm sure you'll talk to Brian at some point tomorrow.
I'll let him
if he's
know.
not watching. Does anybody have any other business to bring up?
What's this management letter?
This was the audit that was in the process of being done of the town books.
It's not completed yet, the audit? or-
This is the draft for us to read before they do issue the final document.
Yeah, that came in this morning, Stan. It's an FYI more than anything else.
Because it looks like they found some, not deficiencies, but some things that should be addressed and worked on.
Right. And I think Ken, with his background, might have some good input on some of these suggestions.
Typically, when we get these, in my career, it included responses from the appropriate parties so that we could see the issue and then see the management's response to those issues before we finalize the.
Yeah, that was the one that came from the auditor. Just before we went live, I was in the treasurer's office, and Susan said that she and Kayla had responded. So
Oh, good. Okay.
I haven't got to that point
That
yet.
I'd like to see.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll forward that to the board members.
Okay. You have anything else under
No?
other business? Ken, do you have anything you want to bring up?
No, good.
Pop-up pantry next week, Wednesday early, correct?
Correct. Oh, yes, thank you for that reminder. Because of the holiday week, the pop-up pantry was originally scheduled for the 28th. It is now scheduled for the 21st. We've made efforts to notify the appropriate parties, all of the 100+ people that come to the pop-up. But good that you reminded us.
You're gonna have it on when?
It's going to be just a week ahead of what it was originally scheduled. It's usually on the last Wednesday of the month.
So it'll be next
Because-
week Wednesday.
Yeah. The 21st. And we're counting on you to be there to help us.
Better put that in your calendar. And I just want to add one more thing that kind of ties into the senior center, just a thank you to the Bernardston Elementary School. The school typically annually tries to have a food drive for the senior center, and they did
Good.
again this year.
Thank you.
Talking to Jen Reynolds yesterday at the senior center, they were, with the amount of food and donations of other activities that they donated to the seniors, she was able to fill with the COA volunteers 40 bags for 40 different individuals. So just a thank you to the students and staff at the elementary school for that. So if we have no other business, Lou, while we're waiting for our appointment, we might as well do the town coordinator's report.
Ironically, Mr. Chairman, I did not prepare anything
Oh,
because
man.
I was banking on Attorney Solomon's presence tonight, and I figured by 8 o'clock we'd all be ready to cash out. However, now that we've got a few minutes anyway to fill in, I can say that you and I attended a listening session or a joint conversation yesterday at the senior center with fellows from the USDA Rural Development. And you may remember back in October, I went to the STAM quarterly meeting out at Mount Wachusett, and I had a nice conversation with Linda Nichols, who I had not met face to face, but did at that meeting. And Linda had been so helpful while we had tried to obtain the USDA Rural Development loan for the potential fire station project. Lyndon was there at Mount Wachusett that day, and his boss, Scott Soares, was out there, and at that time they gave a very interesting presentation as far as this huge amount of funding that the federal government gives to, they lovingly referred to it as the state of southern New England, because their territory is Mass, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. They were concerned at the meeting in October that so much of the money that is allocated for this 3-state region ends up absorbed, and it goes back to Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas because they can't give it all away. So with the help of Michelle Geruso and Andrea Lamas, we put together a little session yesterday over at the Senior Center. Brian, you are Mr. Chairman, more formally. You were there, and it was a really good and powerful discussion because also on the Zoom component, Senator Comerford was there, Representative Blaze and Representative Whips were there, along with somebody from the COG, and B. Jacques, the chair.
What's the point?
Stretch and stand, stretching.
Well,
Our next
stretching,
appointment is
but
at
I don't even know
7:30.
Everybody in the
So-
state of Massachusetts.
So that's background, that's background.
Okay.
But anyways, long story short, it was a lot of repetitive information. They still have a lot of money available out there. We opened up a line of communication about the repeaters that have been kind of a sticking point for us, especially here in this town hall over the last 6 to 8 weeks. What really made that prominent was Mr. Soares mentioned radios. So I asked the question, I said, well, here in Bernardston, Franklin County wanted to go to this new digital system that out of the box sounded like it was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but then all of a sudden we have gaps in coverage here in town, and it's not like the old days when your TV set was analog and you could go and jimmy with the UHF to make that picture a little better. The old radios were analog, so you could catch part of what was being said, but when it goes digital, if it's there, it's there, and if it's not, it's not. So anyways, we asked him about that, and Lyndon sent me an email this morning, and he has opened a line of communication. Scott Soares was copied on this email, And it looks like he is encouraging us to apply for the repeaters.
They have a special fund that was just allocated by the feds.
Yeah,
That they
the
administer?
ERHC grant.
Thank you. And all is tied to COVID. And it's a very limited scope. And it's a very limited, when it's gone type of a fund. So as of yesterday, they were very clear with that. They said that several times. There were still funds in it. And they seemed rather encouraging to Lou and I that something like these repeaters they would fund up to $150,000 was the number they used.
It's going to make a lot of people happy. Is this something capital assets could help us
Well,
with?
that was when I said earlier I'm going to talk to Blythe tomorrow, because this came in around noontime today. I know Blythe just came back, and we've got to talk to her about the Veterans Project. So I'm going to give Blythe a call tomorrow and see if we can step on the gas and move this forward.
Because just to add to that, that USDA application is 40 pages long. As is typical
Yeah, no question about that.
government.
But, so it'll be a good conversation with Blythe tomorrow. And to your point, Brian, with the frequency of application, because going back a couple of years when we first started to have contact with rural development, we were told that, yeah, all their grants are rolling, and when the money's gone, but it doesn't necessarily all dry up at the same time. So they encouraged us to just continue applying for things. I think it's 44-page application. Once we navigate it a couple times, there's got to be a lot that turns out to be boilerplate. So I think we'll get to the point, if we maybe monthly or quarterly apply for anything that seems relevant.
Police cruisers were a big one.
Yep.
Not that they'll pay the full ride, but they'll pay for our community up to 55%.
Well, and as a matter of fact, not to interrupt you, the first page of the application, they've got a fleet of police cruisers there. So,
and the thing with the funding, we really have to have our ducks in a row, because it's not like our typical rotation for a cruiser is every other year. If we wait till that year and apply, it's only when the funds become available that they would put us in line with it. It could take up to 2 years for them to tag our application with the funding. So Lou and I had a brief conversation today that maybe we should apply for a police cruiser right now, knowing we're going to buy one in another year. If we get it 6 or 8 months early, we'll figure it out to find the funding for it. If we don't have to pay for 55% of it, that's a check. And the Chief Palmieri would just have to know, okay, that started the clock on that one.
yep.
So we don't get way out of the cycle, but let's take advantage of any dollars. They were surprised we hadn't been applying for these. And the 4 towns that were represented there, nobody has, because they didn't know they could.
Yeah, and to that point, at that meeting at Mount Wachusett, I heard it in, almost kind of cynical that they had, I think it was FY19, there was $100 million that went back to other states because not enough people applied. Now, I would add that this has the potential to be really positive for our town, but they also, because it's a lot of rural housing, they have redevelopment, and I picked up some materials, so I'll be putting that on the town website. It may tie into what Mr. McHugh was going to say, when he gets here shortly, but there's just so much money out there. This is the stuff you see in the papers all the time, that hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's not like we're going to walk into Cushman Park and shake a money tree for it, but if it's repeaters now, if it's a police cruiser within a year or so, it's that tangible thing, Stan, that you and I talk about sometimes, that it seems like so much grant money that's out there is for like engineering purposes or technical assistance. I think this is going to be one of those things that the town can get something tangible out of.
And they went into, it could be for equipment for the police cruisers, fire trucks, even your town hall, meaning office furniture if that's what you needed.
This is through the USDA.
But a lot of it is they have a cap on certain grants. So if we had a cruiser that was, let's say, $65,000, the cap might be $50,000, but still that's better than
Yeah.
the full ride.
Well, and prior, well, in the early stages of the pandemic, when we first got involved with USDA, the stepping on point was, yes, their loan program, but again, you see all this money out there, you figure a grant, for something as relevant as a fire station, that there's got to be piles of money available. And oh no, well and they tell you right away, this one was underfunded. We, for the entire region, we got $50,000. Or this other program, we got $25,000.
Why doesn't the grant writers know about this? Why haven't they said something to us about it?
Well, USDA did say that they do a poor job getting their information of what grants are available out there. They have a new mission from the administration to get the word out there about their grants more than they have been.
Yeah, and to your point, Stan, Blythe had mentioned, because I went back through all my emails this morning after I got this, Blythe had mentioned the USDA, but she mentioned the loan program in probably September. But that was something that then when we had that Zoom call with her, and if you remember, she went down the list about this, and this, and we had done everything, and she said, well, geez, Bernardston has done more than a lot of bigger towns have done, and it's just unfortunate that for whatever reason, there were things we just didn't qualify for.
You gotta come up with something, because every day you're reading a paper about another town getting a police cruiser, and the police cruisers are now $70,000. I mean,
Yeah.
we might end up buying Hyundais before we get done. I mean, the prices are just going
Crazy.
out of whack.
When you can get them. I know we were talking to Mark Fortier yesterday, who was at the presentation. He's the head of EMS in Northfield, runs the Northfield ambulance. They ordered a new ambulance, and it's well over a year away.
This article that Stan's referring to, I think they said 2 years to get the police.
And they got probably 100 of them sitting down here down by
Yeah.
the Applebee's in Greenfield.
Yeah.
Fleet cars. I don't know where they're going, but there's a bunch of police cars down there.
While we're waiting, 2 questions. One, should we draw any concern about Attorney Solomon canceling his appearance? Is it?
No.
Okay.
And that's a very good question. But I got on the phone with him 3:30.
This is the attorney that's doing the Comcast 10-year agreement with us, so folks know.
So about 3:30, got on the phone with him, and when Brian walked in,
Yeah,
I don't know, 4:30. I'm trying to get the meeting set up. I've got speakerphone. I'm running around. I'm typing one-handed, just trying to get caught up. But as a component of that, there were 3 separate conference calls that took place. First one was with Matt Skane from Comcast, because the sticking point that I alluded to. Second one was with Otis Wheeler from BNC TV. And then it was back to all 4 of us on the conference call. Again, because the build-out that is, to me, the critical component of all of this, and why it feels like I've been beating my head against a wall for 3 years now. The critical component is the build-out for the people who are unserved here in town. And there was some confusion on Attorney Solomon's end as to the documentation for it. Mr. Skane from Comcast cleared it up, and he said that MBI is of the opinion that the cable television license has to be signed, sealed, and delivered before they will get things in motion. He also mentioned that MBI has a January 15th deadline. So one of the more terse messages I passed along was, this needs to get done. It needs to get done now. Attorney Solomon said that he'll work on it, and you will have something to sign off. He said next week, so I don't know if we want to do an afternoon meeting to simply sign a cable TV license, so that we're not in the twilight zone with any of the NBI situation. But they're going to draft that letter, and we should be in better shape.
Good.
Where do we stand on the plans for the fire station?
Signed, sealed, and delivered. They're in my office.
Excellent.
Building plans?
Yes.
That we were gonna get in June.
And literally sealed.
Well, with 3 rubber bands.
There you go.
Good.
Yeah, Brian delivered them on Monday.
Thank you, Brian.
He also gave us an electronic copy, so I can post that, share it, whatever you want to do.
Good.
Can we talk for, we're still trying to kill a little time here. The next meeting, December 28th. I'll be out of town that day. Lou has a conflict. Do you guys want to?
Would make a motion that we forego that meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can one of you gentlemen come in to sign the warrant on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday?
Should be Wednesday.
Wednesday, we'll have to sign the warrant either way so people get paid.
Yeah, just let me know when and I'll come in.
Yeah, Kayla's usually got them done by 2:30.
On Wednesday,
Yeah.
the 28th.
Okay. The other thing I had was this group agreed that we were going to visit all of the town buildings,
Yes.
part of the budget process, and we got a good start at that, and then
Yeah.
it slowed down a bit. We need to find some
Yes.
dates on everybody's calendars.
This is a good point. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but after we had scheduled or we had put forth some dates to choose for the library, nobody ever followed up on it from the library. And then the day that it was supposed to, I think it was November 15th, if I'm not mistaken, I had a call from Karen. And she said, "Oh, Brando Grover's working late. He can't make the appointment today." To which I said, "What appointment?" And she said that they had figured that was going to be our day. And I said, "Well, nobody ever let us know that that was going to be the day." So
Let me just throw a suggestion out there. Next week, Wednesday, the 3 of us typically, you two all the time, are at the pop-up pantry.
Yep.
At the senior center. It's in my calendar to be there, so I'll be there. Can we, I know me and Jen might have to stay a couple minutes late, but can we reach out to Jen and ask her to want to stay after the pop-up pantry? We won't have a board meeting that day because it's an off week.
Absolutely.
And do the senior center that day when we're there. Does that seem fair to everybody if that works?
That works.
And just shoot us all an email, Lou, if it's good for her. I can't imagine it'll take that long. I'm sure she has a list anyway of pet projects. Most department heads do. Come on in.
welcome.
How are you doing?
Good to see you, Brian.
You too.
You're 5 minutes early.
That's perfect. Come on right up to the table.
Thursday? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So when did you want me?
Unless you need to go to the
Sign
restroom
that
first, Randy.
warrant.
No,
Okay.
it should be.
28th.
We've gone through this before.
And I'll
Yes.
certainly talk to you before then.
But just shoot us an email if that date for the 21st will work for Jen so I can add some time onto my calendar. I gotta believe, what, an hour, probably more than enough in the building?
Yeah. Did we ever seal it up for winter?
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Water's drained, upstairs is sealed off. Good to go. Brian, welcome from the Franklin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. So, yeah, I'm Brian McHugh, Director of Community Development at Franklin County Regional Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I'm here tonight to talk about the grant opportunity for the town, Community Development Block Grant through the Department of Housing and Community Development. I've been here before. We've been here a few times over the years, trying to get one particular project moved forward. I can give you a little bit of background on that in a second, but I wanted to just sort of cover the bases. I wanted to talk about, what the Community Development Block Grant Program is, what kind of projects are eligible under it, and what sort of there's a national objective that you have to meet in order to qualify for these programs. So. The meeting tonight was just it's an informational meeting to get some public input from the board about what kind of projects you might want to move forward in this grant application. Every project that you do has to meet one of three national objectives. One is a benefit to low and moderate income residents. One is eliminating slum and blight, and one is to respond to an urgent need. That's very rare I've been there for 32 years, and we've only done it once. It's usually it's like for a catastrophic event. And when Tropical Storm Irene came through, there was a road that got washed out in Ashfield and didn't have any FEMA money. So it's when all money is exhausted, you can use that urgent need category. But again, it's very rare. So typically, we're doing projects that are benefiting low and moderate income residents or eliminating slum and blight. In order to qualify for a slum and blighted project, you have to have an area designated as slum and blight, and there's a process for that. And usually you're doing some kind of commercial rehab in that program. So we tend to just do low and moderate income benefit projects. There's been a few over the years. We've been running housing rehab programs in Bernardston for a number of years, different applications or different grant cycles. But we also did work at the Powers Institute for the kitchen over there, I believe, and the accessibility improvements there, and accessibility here also at one point. So there's 5 categories that qualify. There's housing assistance, which a lot of times most of the time includes housing rehab programs. There's public social service programs, which include a variety of different things. Last year, the town reallocated some money that it had to the food pantry here, those sort of programs. There are infrastructure projects you can do that are typically sewer and water projects, sidewalks, that sort of thing. There are public facility projects, including senior centers, accessibility improvements at town halls and such. If you go for a construction project like that, you have to have bid-ready plans and specs, and we can talk about doing that. If there are some projects that you might want to advance, we can talk about doing that in subsequent grant applications, because you're not going to be there we haven't identified, or I don't know of any of the projects that you're ready to go on that might be qualified under a low and moderate income benefit. When you're doing a project that, let's say it's a sewer project, you'll have to do an income survey of people in that area that are in the service area to make sure that 51% of them are low and moderate income. There was a project that was going to be included last year at Bernardston Country Estates. It was the community septic project down there. The reason it wasn't submitted for the application, we had done a lot of the application work, but they didn't secure funding themselves to cover the cost above and beyond what it would cost, what the grant application can cover. So this year, what's happened is that one of the last categories are planning projects. So you might do a feasibility study or something like that, or a master plan or something is eligible under this program also. But what's happened this year is that the Department of Housing and Community Development didn't hold a round that would have been due last March, because COVID just ended up pushing out grant applications, and we didn't hear about our grant application for many months after when we typically would have. And then they got a lot of money through the CARES Act, and so anyway, so they didn't hold a round, and they're doing a double round this time, which means the town's eligible for more money than it normally would have been eligible for. Usually you're eligible for an $800,000 loan, grant. This year you're eligible for $1.35 million, which means that if the town wanted to advance forward that project down at BC, I'm going to say BCE, Bernardston Country Estates, then it's possible that the majority of that cost can be included in the grant, and they wouldn't have to borrow as much money. They have secured a $200,000 loan to put towards this, and they've used some of that money for design work right now. They have an engineer under contract to prepare the bid-ready plans and specifications and offer a cost estimate. It's Huntley Associates, and we've had several meetings with them about where they're at with their design and what kind of costs are associated with it now, because it's crept up and up and up, as everyone knows. All these projects are costing more than, it's crazy. So now it's about $1 million project. It was $800,000 at one point, under $800,000 at one point. So now it's around, that's $1 million from a cost estimate we got late spring. And so he's working on another one so we can nail down the price on that. And then, there are admin costs that, our agency gets that come out of that 1.35 million. We can get up to 27% of a grant application. We wouldn't do that for this round, because if we were to if you wanted to advance that project, there isn't as much oversight as we normally would have with like a big housing rehab program. There's a lot more hands-on there. You're doing small projects, but you're spending just as much time on that small project as you are maybe on a $1 million project, honestly, and plus the engineer is under contract to do construction oversight. So we're, one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight also was the possibility of including a small housing rehab program in the grant application. Right now you have 4 people on a waiting list. We've been using some money that's been coming back from paybacks from previous loans from people who have gone through the program before, and we have a contract with you to reloan that money out. So we've used that money, to address some emergency repairs that might come up from people, but we're getting our list is getting built up now, and we're, 4 people, I'm talking about a 3 or 4 unit housing rehab program maybe tacked on to this grant application, depending on what that cost estimate comes in at. I'm making an assumption that you want to go forward with this. I'm not telling you this is what you have to do. I'm just giving you the information that we have right now. That 2 viable projects are that big project at BCE, and then maybe a small housing rehab program. So.
I do know, Ken, just so you know, it was only a year and a half ago or so,
Yeah.
we did support that program to try to help them get that septic system back up to snuff.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't get their match at the time.
Yeah.
It sounds like now they have some of their funding. So this board did commit to doing that.
Yeah.
I'd be in support of doing that again and adding the housing.
I would too.
Okay, great.
There's how many residences again? I think it's 30.
There's 38.
38.
Yeah. So, and what's happening right now down there. So yes, we have, thank you for bringing that up, because it wasn't even just last year, the year before, this has been in the works for a few years, and it's always been, and there's been some turnover on their board, and it's just, Paul Parda was president, then he wasn't, then he is again, and it was just, it's a lot to put together, to secure a loan for a place like that. So what we put them in touch with an agency called RCAP Solutions. They're out of Worcester. They do a lot of water and sewer projects. They're like consultants. It's a nonprofit, and they were able to guide them in the direction of getting a loan for $200,000. They actually, the loans were only supposed to be $100,000, but somehow they worked it and they got $200,000, and it's set aside. They've gotten that loan. They've used some of that money to address some of the lines that have been failing to the homes down there. It's got Orangeburg, piping, so which is that fiber, the stuff that crushes over time, where you get what it is, right? So sometimes they fail, so they've used a little bit of that money to address that. But this, the way it's designed right now, it's to put replace the septic system entirely, and then do all new lines throughout the park. So you can have all brand new, sewer lines to each of them. So they've done a lot of work, and yes, we have a lot of documentation from the support from the board and other people. This is just sort of to refresh it. I know, Ken, you weren't part of that, so
right.
And so I wanted to bring it up, as I was hoping that you'd support that one again, and also if the money's there.
What do we need to do that? Anything special?
You just need to get, you don't have to vote on anything tonight. There'll be a public hearing sometime in January. The application is due March 3rd. We've got a lot of work that we do building up to that, but we laid out all our public hearings. I don't remember when we were targeting yours. We looked at when your select board meetings are, and we'll work with Lewis about when that is. And I don't know, did Sharon send you that already or not? Possibilities for public hearings, Sharon Pleasant?
She asked about meeting dates, but she's not confirmed anything yet.
So we write grants for multiple towns, so I just came from Orange and then came here, so it's like I can't remember which ones I'm going to without Sharon Pleasant Hill, where I'm going tonight, you know?
Good to have a
so-
good ad.
Yeah. So, but
That's
yeah.
great news, though, it really is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great project, I think, you know, and it would be, we did an income survey, there was an old one, they're only good for 3 years, to make sure that the residents are low, moderate income. So we did one this fall, and they just have to hit 51% or more, and it was 80%, 82%, I think it was. So it's gonna benefit a lot of your residents in town, so I think it would be a great project, so all I need from you it doesn't have to be a vote, just your blessing to sort of work on this and, you know, come back to you at the public hearing and work with Lewis and you know, there are some things that, you know, we'll
My
need
blessing.
from you.
Yeah, mine too.
For sure. What's that?
You got my blessing.
Okay, all right, great.
You've
All
been
right.
blessed.
Yep.
Is there something official we can do? I'll take it, you know, I need all the blessings. Yeah.
They've been working on that for a long time.
Yeah.
I know.
If you get
That's,
that done, that'd be great.
You guys have a lot into it too, so it would be great to close it out for everybody.
yeah, we do, you know, it's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of these projects that I'm like, this has to happen.
Yeah, it
you know?
does. It does.
And what are they gonna do, you know, it's so great. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
All right,
Okay.
all right, great, that's great.
That was it. Appreciate it.
See you, yeah. Good to
Thank
see
you.
All right.
Okay.
don't forget
Motion
that.
to adjourn.
You want a second, Stanley's?
What's that?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor? Aye.
Oh, you're waiting for me?
We were filling some time.
Absolutely.
That's all right. It's all good.